You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
And welcome to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community. I am Ben Wolf, your host. Happy to have you for another episode where we're going to learn from our guest today how to become a leader that others want to follow. And so with that, I remind you to please subscribe, whatever platform you are listening to or watching this on, leave a review, and make this content we're sharing here more accessible to yourself and through algorithms more accessible to others by doing that. Subscribe, leave a review, like, comment, share, whatever it is that it allows you to do on the platform that you're on. So with that, our guest today is the president and CEO of Harbour Resources Leadership Consulting, where he helps people become a leader others want to follow as a consultant, coach, trainer, and a speaker. He is also the host of the Lead Up podcast, as those of you who are watching on YouTube can see on his microphone. You can find out more about that or check out the podcast at leaduppodcast.com. You can find more about him in general and his practice and what he does with clients at mikeharbour.net. That's Mike Harbour, HARBOUR.net. And with that, I give you Mike Harbour. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Ben, great to be here, man. It's a big, you got the spelling right too. So that's always good.
Yeah. Well, you gotta pay attention to those kinds of things because Harbour, it's very British. I don't know the way you spell it.
You just get tired of telling people how to spell it. Yeah, whatever, man. However you spell it.
Hopefully Google can fix it for you.
That's right.
So definitely happy to talk with you. Our friend Derek Newcomer, an EOS implementer out in Pennsylvania, I believe, has introduced us, and so very happy to meet you. And I guess just to ask you, I kind of introduced at a very high level what you do, but can you just give me the quick 2-minute story on how you got to be talking about and doing and working on and teaching what you are?
Yeah, really kind of lucky, Ben. I was in the military back in the early and late 90s. I joined the military out of college. I went to college to play baseball. I thought that's what I was going to do. Every man's dream or every kid's dream to play professional baseball. And I played for a few years in college, and that didn't work out. And so I got serious about my education. I quit baseball and joined a fraternity, which landed me in the Army, by the way. And, luckily when I was in the military, that's when I really got into kind of personal growth. I thought I was a leader prior to that, and really I was horrible at it. I was more of a bully. I was loud. I was proud. I yelled at people. I could get stuff done, right? I'm a driver. But luckily when I was in the military, I had some people that really believed in me, challenged me to grow, gave me some books to read, started putting me in leadership positions. I promoted pretty quickly in the military, and it was really just through mentorship, studying, lots of reading. And back in those days, I'm probably a little bit older than you, Ben, but back in those days, I would drive home from Georgia back to Arkansas, and I would put my CD books in, and I would listen to books on CD. Back then, now I love my iPhone, right? Because I can listen to podcasts like this all day long.
Yeah.
And I read, I just listen to audible books. I'm a pretty boring guy because I'm constantly, when I'm on the treadmill, I'm listening to books, right? I'm just growing. And so how I got here is really just a desire to be that leader that others would follow. Like you said at the beginning, and I wasn't, because I didn't have good modeling growing up. I come from a very dysfunctional upbringing, childhood. Parents were very dysfunctional, but I desired leadership. I wanted others to follow me, and I knew I needed to grow. I didn't know that until somebody told me that, right? I had a major that I reported to. He said, Mike, you've got a lot of potential, but you need to get better. You need to learn. You need to learn to relate to people. And so that's where I really started that journey when I was 23 years old. So I've been on a leadership growth journey, man, for over 25 years now, which is kind of where I met Derek too. I've been a student of John Maxwell's. And I met Derek at a John Maxwell conference, and we became fast friends. I've done a little mentoring with him as well. So that's a little bit about how I got to where I'm at today.
All right. Well, it's quite interesting. I mean, my dad went to Tulane University, also fraternity, also in the Army for a while, and he was in the regular Army, and his father, my grandfather, was actually career Army and was a a full colonel by the time my grandfather retired.
Nice.
But so I guess with the work that you're doing, and I guess what I'm trying to be able to get people who are listening to or watching this to be able to see themselves is uh, first describe the problem. You describe some of the stuff from your own experience, but what does it look like? People in this audience are typically people who have or they're leaders in a business, a small or mid-sized business. So
Mm-hmm.
what does it look like when somebody's not a strong leader? uh, what happens? What does it look like? What's that like?
That's a great question. I think one of the most dangerous things we can do as a leader is to think we are one when we're
Mm.
not, right? And again, not to offend anybody, but I thought I was a leader. I gravitated to leadership roles um, because I was a driver. I was kind of loud. I was a little bit pushy. Um, and if you bring that style into leading others, Ben, you're going to fail really fast. Now you can get stuff done. I was pretty good at getting stuff done, right? And your listeners, they may be good at getting stuff done, but what happens is if we're not a good leader, if we're not a strong leader, we lose people. What I did is I would leave people in the dust, right? I would burn them up because I'm a high D type A individual, drive, push, push, push. And I'd turn around and no one's with me. No one's following me, right? And so you're not a leader if you don't have followers. And so for your listeners, number one is if we're a bad leader, if we're not a strong leader, we're gonna create a wake of turnover under our leadership. Companies, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're leading a company, and one of the key metrics you need to measure every quarter is your turnover. If you have high turnover, if you lead a company and you have leaders that have high turnovers in their department, that's a leadership issue. So you have to fix that, and that's really where poor leadership shows up, is when people kind of come and go. If we have that constant churn
Mm-hmm.
with people as well. So, and that ultimately, Ben, as you know, doing what you do, it impacts the bottom line, right? If you want to improve your
That's
bottom line,
expensive. Yeah.
oh yeah, I mean, just look, at a minimum, it's about 3 times the cost of someone's salary. Let's just say, in my world, I work with a lot of leaders. Let's say a leader has $100,000 salary. If we lose that leader, at a minimum, it's going to cost us $300,000 to replace them. That's lost productivity costs, that's recruiting costs, all of those things. So that's at a minimum, and if that's a $50,000 job, then it's costing you 150 grand. If you're losing 10 of those, that's $1.5 million, right? And so that goes right to the bottom line. If you're a leader, if you're an entrepreneur, that's a key metric every leader should be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't grow as leaders, that is a major impact for it. And then it makes it harder to recruit people, right? Recruit better talent, because if we're always running good talent off, we cannot recruit better talent. We think we can, but we can't.
Reputational issue.
Absolutely.
Well, and so besides hard driving, what other kinds of bad leaders might people be who are listening to this, like, that you could describe? What other kinds of, I guess, mistakes or kinds of bad leadership might people be seeing in themselves or in their organizations?
Oh yeah, there's so many, and I have a lot of these myself. So that's why I like leadership development, because I got a lot of areas to grow. But in my coaching practice and my leadership development practice, the things that I see most are poor communication, leaders who just cannot communicate. It's the number one skill as a leader we have to develop. I used to be being a horrible communicator. I mentioned a little bit about my childhood. I watched my parents, they fought every single day. They were combustible, right? I mean, they were like butting heads every day. And so that was the style of communication I saw growing up. And so I had to learn how to communicate with people who don't respond to that kind of leadership, right? Communication, or poor communication. If you're a leader, you have to be able to communicate your vision, your values, the mission. You have to be able to communicate about results. If you can't do those things, you got to get in some sort of speaking training or communications training class. And look, Ben, I'm talking to people. The person talking to you today, I took F's in speech class in college because I was so afraid to speak in front of other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And today I get paid tens of thousands of dollars a year to speak to people. It's a developed skill. So number one is communication. I think the next thing is micromanagement. If you're a micromanager, no one wants to be micromanaged. Just, paint the picture, give the vision, give people the tools. I don't like the word really empowerment, but equip them with the tools, give them the resources to be successful, and then coach and mentor them along the way to get the things done. Those are two other things. And then maybe the third thing I would say, other than, the three I've already mentioned, the fourth thing would be kind of the leader who hides, like the leader who stays in their office and it just expects everybody to get the work done. But when they don't get it done, they come out and kind of bark orders. I think those are three, other than the hard charging driver that I mentioned about myself, those three things right there, I have to work on with leaders a lot. And then, there's always the leader who takes credit for the team's work. There's multiple things we could go through, but I think those three or four are the big ones out there that leaders have to be aware of.
So then I guess what I want to know or hear and others would want to hear is, okay, so what if I want to be the kind of leaders others do want to follow or a good leader? So then what's 2-3 things that, of course, the more you could throw in, examples and stories of people that you've worked with, but just tell me about 2 or 3 things that people could be doing or changing or improving to, to make themselves into better leaders or people that others would want to follow.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing we have to do is create an awareness of what our strengths and our weaknesses are. I think one of the ways we can do that, I've got a company that I'm working with. Matter of fact, they're out of Connecticut, but they've got a branch here in Arkansas where I work. One of the leaders I'm coaching right now, they hired her. She's a high level director. She's got about 10 direct reports underneath her, and all of her direct reports impact the entire organization. And she had some challenges. And so one of the first things we did there was we did a 360 survey. And so with a 360, for your listeners that don't know, a 360 it's a perception survey. And what we do is we ask people who you work with that report to you, your peers and people you report to, how they perceive you as a leader. And so there's different leadership competencies that we're looking at. It's kind of a rating, and it begins to bring that awareness in. But for the leader, being what they have to do is kind of set their ego aside, because sometimes you get feedback that you don't really want to hear, but you need to hear, right? So it's that awareness. I think that's one of the keys. And in coaching, they need a coach like you to come in alongside them and help them see things that they may not be seeing themselves.
So to get honest feedback, that's the first thing you're saying, whether it's from your peers, from your direct reports, from a coach, somebody who's not afraid, however you set that up, to give you honest feedback.
Absolutely. And look, one of the greatest gifts I was given when I was 25 years old, I was in the military. I was developing my leadership skill and style, but I had a troop that reported to me that had the moxie to tell me what I was doing wrong. My talk was not matching my walk. It was the greatest gift that was ever given to me, because
these people reported to you. They were not your peers.
This person reported to me, and it's a lesson. This is 25, 26 years later, being that I still use that lesson to make sure, okay, Michael, if you're going to teach this, you need to walk it. Your actions need to match your talk. And so for leaders out there, I think, one, be willing to ask your team, the people that report to you, how they perceive you. What feedback would they give you that they really want you to hear? Those are just 2 examples, the 360 survey and then that feedback I was given when I was 25 years old that I still use today to help me be better.
Right. And what else? What's another 1 or 2 things you would say for somebody who wants to be a better leader that people would follow?
Yeah, I think you need a mentor, Ben. I think for me, probably the greatest things I've ever done. Look, I grew up afraid to ask for help. I don't know if you have that problem, Ben, but I grew up afraid to ask for help. But as I got older, I began to realize that the greatest thing I could do is ask people for advice, for help, their experience. And so I think if there's a leader in your organization, so, again, I'm talking to your audience here. If there's a leader in your organization that is a better leader than you, they get great results, ask them to mentor you. And maybe they're not in your organization. Maybe they're outside your organization. Maybe you need to hire a coach. Hire a coach. I think hiring coaches, I've paid tens of thousands of dollars for coaches myself to help me create awareness, create momentum myself. So I think, those two things, you don't have to spend money. A mentor sometimes is just as busy as you are. And so they may not have all the time to give you the advice, the attention that you need. And that's why investing in a coach is good, because that's what coaches get paid to do, is to help you move forward. So I think those are two things that, all leaders should invest, or at least their company should invest in coaching for them.
Right. Right. No, I appreciate those things in terms of the feedback. In terms of the 360, I guess if people, I was thinking about it, when people might be hesitant to give you honest feedback, especially if they report to you. But I think in that 360 situation you mentioned, there's systems that you could get where it's anonymous. And so I guess it decreases the likelihood that you could guess who's giving the feedback, might make them a little more comfortable. And I guess one of the things I saw on your website is you talk about making end of quarter adjustments to win the first half. I don't know if this is just like going into a very specific topic, but that was like using a certain terminology, and what does that mean in terms of, I guess, what I might be doing as a leader?
Yeah, it's a great question. Let me go back to your 360 comment for just a minute. I use an electronic 360, so it is anonymous. People can go and give the feedback electronically. Their name is not attached to the results of that, so you can do those things anonymously. I've done them, where some companies have hired me to come in and actually do interviews. That's less anonymous, although I don't. What I do, when I set those agreements up, is I get a commitment from the company. They're not going to ask me who said what, so I don't give that information. So there are various ways to do that as well. As far as the end of quarter adjustments, you're referencing a podcast I did back recently at the end of March of 2021. And, I think at the end of I actually do this every day, Ben. Every day I look at my day. I have a planner that I use, and I make adjustments at the end of every day. What did I do well? This is some of the stuff I learned when I was in the military. After every kind of mission or exercise we were doing, it was, what we do right, what we do wrong, what do we need to do to get better. But I think there are things that often people do. They set big goals, right? In January comes around. 2020 was crazy, Ben. We all know that, right? And so we go into 2021, we set these big goals, and 2021 may not have gotten much better for anybody, right? Because we're still fighting this whole COVID thing, and we can't get out as much. And so we set these big goals, and then we get to the end of March and we're like, oh man, I didn't hit those targets. I didn't hit those goals. I guess I'll wait till next year. That's what a lot of people do, right? Right. And so I think there's adjustments that everybody has to make. It could be daily, it could be weekly, it could be monthly, but at a minimum quarterly. Okay, I'm a little bit off here. And I always use weight as an example because it's easy. Maybe your goal was to lose 25 pounds and you only lost 5 for the quarter. What are you going to adjust so that you hit that goal the second quarter, right? Maybe what do you need to adjust? Maybe you got sick and you couldn't eat right. Maybe you got sick and you couldn't exercise. What are you going to adjust in your eating schedule, your diet, your exercise schedule? That's what I mean about making those adjustments. Don't just give in to,
not all or nothing.
Mindset. Yeah. And look, most people, they're so hard on themselves. I failed. I can't do it. I quit. And, I'm a big believer in failing forward, like Thomas Edison. I'm sure you've heard the old Thomas Edison quote when a reporter asked him, "Hey, Mr. Edison, why do you keep trying to build that light bulb when when you failed so many times?" And he says, "I haven't failed 10,000 times. I've simply found 10,000 ways that didn't work." Right. We got to learn from those failures so that we can move forward, right? It's not a failure. It's something. It's just something that didn't work that we can adjust and move forward.
Right. I appreciate it. I mean, it's a good tool, and it's a good reminder not to have that all or nothing mindset, and to and not to just give up when things when things get off track early on.
Yeah.
So that's a valuable. Another thing I saw on your website, I wonder if you could talk about and how people might use it, is what is this daily compass tool, a quarter planning tool, and those things that you offer. Again, people can find out more information. Mike Harbour, HARBOUR.com, right? No,
Dot
.net.
net.
Sorry.
.net. Yeah.
And so what is that? If you don't mind.
Yeah. So I have a tool that I created. It's, I used to call it my action planner, my daily action planner. But, I think of a compass, or, today we call it a GPS, Ben. When you get into, you just mentioned you went on a trip to Florida and you drove, and you probably got on
One day.
995 and went straight down. You probably didn't have to put any
Mostly.
direction. Yeah. So, but
Yes, they take the belt maybe around DC, but
yeah, I mean, you might have had to use the GPS, right? But many times when we go somewhere we've never been, nowadays, I use my smartphone or I use the GPS in my vehicle, and I put coordinates in to where I want to go. And sometimes, Ben, we're driving down the road and there's been a wreck, or there's road construction. There's something that may create a roadblock or a detour, but the coordinates never change, right? Maybe we got to go around, maybe we got to take a detour, maybe we got to, take an exit and try to get around the stalled traffic. If you're like me, I'm real impatient, so I'm going to try to find the quickest way around that wreck or whatever. But that GPS, it keeps telling us, hey, make a left turn, make a right turn. It gives us the direction we want to go. And so the daily compass tool for me is every day, Ben, I start with my coordinates. Like, what are the 3 things I want to do today? So I'll show you. I mean, this is my quarterly planner. I don't know if you can see this with this
the blur function. Okay.
Yeah, let me shut that blur function off for just a minute so we can see this here. It's not going to work. Here we go.
Oh, there you go. So for those who are not watching on the video, it says it's a black folder. Says the Daily Compass Quarterly Planner for High Achievers.
Yeah. And so this is something you can buy on Amazon.com. And so, in here, I'm showing you a page of my daily compass. You're looking at the page for today.
Right.
Ben. So what I do is every day in there, based on research. Okay. There's a book that was written called 4 Disciplines of Execution. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book.
No.
But in that book,
4
there's a lot of
dysfunctions or 5 dysfunctions of a team. But
Patrick Lencioni. But this is a book called 4 Disciplines of Execution, and in that book, they talk about the research that they did, Ben, about if you have 10 goals, if you have up to 10 goals, the odds of you getting any of those done in a year is pretty much 0. Okay. 4 to 10. If you have 4 to 10 goals, the odds are you're going to get 3 of those goals done. But if you have 3 goals, the odds are 100%. That's research that they did based on that book. So in my daily compass tool, what I do is I teach people to have three tasks, 3 goals a day, three tasks, and start. That's your coordinates. Like, what are the 3 most important things I want to get done today? And then list out the tasks that we have to get done to move us in that direction. So, and then there's the after action review that I said, what I do well, how did I do it? What are the adjustments that I need to make tomorrow in order to get that project to completion? So it's just a tool, Ben, that here's what most people do. They kind of look at their calendar, they check their voicemail and their email and say, okay, what do I got to get done today? Well, who's going to tell me what to do? Right. The daily compass tool is you telling yourself what to do before anyone else tells you what to do.
And that's specifically the beginning of each day, not just like do it for each day at the beginning of the week, but you do it every day, the same day.
Yeah, I do it every single day. That's why I call it a daily compass tool. But look, sometimes when I coach people, if their tasks don't change a whole lot, or if they don't have it, like I'm an entrepreneur, right? I'm a business owner. I've got a million things like you I'm trying to get done. And if I focus on all 1 million things, I get 0 done. But sometimes I'll tell people, use it as a weekly tool. Use it as a weekly compass tool versus a daily compass tool. It really depends on the aspect of your job. Right. But what I'm really trying to do is get people to quit looking at their emails and their voicemails and their and their calendar to tell them what to do and really get the things done that are important, Ben, because we're living in a world where people are so dissatisfied, and it's because they're not managing their day. They're not managing it's not about managing time. It's about managing your day and managing the priorities in that. That's really what I teach people to do using that tool.
Right. Yeah. I definitely appreciate that. It makes me think of a lot of things. I mean, one thing is in EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, just within an organization, you set up rocks. You set up just 3 to 7 goals, not 37 or 10 or whatever, but 3 to 7, ideally closer to 3 rocks, or like main goals, things that are important but not urgent, that are the main things you need to do to get, to move the ball forward, to get where you want to get to. That are, unless you set aside time, all those emails and calendar invites and little fires that come up just take over all your time and energy, and you just end up at the end of a day looking back and saying, like, what did I even do today? You just didn't do anything.
Yeah, the real question for all of us is do we want to be busy or do we want to be productive? Right. And a tool, whether it's a daily compass tool or some sort of EOS planning tool that you guys have, it's about being productive. And, I know for me personally, I get more done than most people do in a day. I get more done in a day than most people get done in a week, because I'm very strict with my time. I manage my time very effectively using that daily compass tool. I've coached thousands of people to use this tool, Ben, because, I get there's about 3 things when people ask me to coach them. There's about 3 things that are kind of top of the list. One is help me manage my time. Like, teach me how to manage time. Well, I already said I can't teach you how to manage time, but I can teach you how to get the right things done, the priorities done. The second thing is help me be a better leader. Like, help me to learn to communicate with people more effectively, and then help me to deal with difficult people. Those are probably the top 3 things I do when I'm coaching people. But number 1 is time management. I call it priority management, but that's a tool that I use every day.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, we've had a far-reaching conversation. I mean, from being a more effective leader and the downfalls that happen with you when we don't focus on being a better leader, to to time management and planning and effectiveness. I appreciate the wide-ranging conversation we've had today. The huge amount of value you shared with me and with the people listening to or watching this. Again, people can learn more about Mike Harbour and the work he does, and potentially using him or his speaking services at Mike Harbour, HARBOUR.net. And again, just really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you.
Hey, Ben, this was a pleasure, man. I hope we added a great deal of value to your listeners, and looking forward to learning more about you all going forward as well.
That is the goal, to share that value. And thank you so much, and appreciate it. And we'll see everybody else on the other side. Thank you.
You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.